This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by Greenworks Consults, a company run by a longtime listener to the show, Jason, who's an expert when it comes to helping businesses get better at doing business. Learn more about what Greenworks Consults can do for you over at greenworksconsults.com with works spelled W-O-R-X. That's greenworksconsults.com. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Wednesday, August 5th, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 960 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We lead off the day's headlines with a bit of good news out of British Columbia, Canada, as the province just announced that marijuana consumers can now pay for their cannabis online through an app or over the phone. This is a fairly big development, as generally our industry has been one of cash only and has shied away from proper online sales, even up in Canada. British Columbia has around 200 dispensaries that will be able to take advantage of this new rule change, and I would not be surprised to see the same thing taken up by other Canadian provinces. Customers are still required to go to the dispensary to pick up their orders, so there's still room for delivery to be allowed later down the road. That, of course, would completely cut out the need for dispensary visits, which would be even more effective at coronavirus suppression. This is a good storyline to keep on top of, as things are going to eventually move that way down here in the States. Ben Adlin and Marijuana Moment keeps our attention up north in Canada, with big news breaking yesterday that the Canadian Health Minister is allowing 4 cancer patients to use psilocybin mushrooms as part of their end-of-life care. The petitions were submitted back in April and now approved will allow the 4 patients the right to undergo psychedelic-assisted therapy, which has anecdotally at least been helpful to people transitioning out of life dealing with anxiety and depression. As Ben points out in his piece, the interest in psychedelic-assisted therapy has been on the upswing in recent years, with Johns Hopkins University starting up a $17 million research project last fall to study how psychedelics can help with conditions like depression, PTSD, and opioid addiction. This is another big storyline that I would ignore at your own professional peril, so not a bad one to read in full as well. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. We wrap up the day's top headlines with another bit of relatively good news, this time out of New Mexico, where numbers show a sharp rise in legal cannabis sales compared to last year. As an estimated $92 million was spent by the state's 94,000 or so registered patients in the first 6 months of this year, a jump of 55% over the same period last year. The top 3 listed qualifying conditions in New Mexico are PTSD, chronic pain, and cancer, which are generally among the top conditions in states with explicit lists. Those are the top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Greenworks Consults, a company run by a longtime listener to the show, Jason, who's an expert when it comes to helping businesses get better at doing business. Head over to greenworksconsults.com today to check out details for their introductory consultation, where they take inventory of your business needs and then develop a draft project format and charter, which can lead you down the path towards improved efficiency, decreased costs, and increased profits. Who doesn't like increased profits? And the best thing about working with Greenworks Consults is that the power to bump up your profits is in your hands right now. Just about every business has some area where it could be doing things better, which in the game of commerce means spending less money and realizing more of it in the bank at the end of the month. Take the first easy step towards making more money today by opening up greenworksconsults.com and get in touch with Jason and his team of experts. One more time, that's greenworksconsults.com with works spelled W-O-R-X. All right, time for the Blitz. Leafly's David Downs takes us back to the simpler days of mid-2019, where the biggest and scariest thing in our industry's radar was the vaporizer health crisis, which led to the death of more than 1,000 people over the course of the year from the use of tainted illicit market vapes. David's story reminds us that the tainted chemicals that created the vape health crisis are still out there, as Oregon lawmakers are moving to ban certain kinds of vaporizer flavoring agents thought to be contributing factors to health problems. If you could use a refresher on the particulars of things like vitamin E acetate, David's long form and detailed look is another good story to read in full today. Marijuana Business Daily's chart of the week wades into the preferred consumption modalities for cannabis consumers of different generations, finding that millennials tend to prefer inhalable forms of marijuana at a far higher rate than baby boomers, who tend more towards cannabis capsules than their younger cohort. The numbers were generated out of a Chicago dispensary and are certainly worth a little consideration if your business at all is consumer-facing. Deborah Borchardt over Green Market Report is reporting that a beer distributor in Arkansas just added a hemp beverage to its line. The company Good Hemp will distribute its Good Hemp Fizz and Canna Hemp drinks, which have 10 milligrams of non-THC hemp extract, through premium brands of Northwest Arkansas. Good Hemp is getting around the need for FDA approval by extracting with hemp seed oil, which is already considered safe for consumption. Expect to see more deals like this everywhere. Canadian marijuana giant Canopy Growth just produced an interesting interview worthy of a watch with top Democratic lawmaker Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina, who is also Majority Whip of the House, the third highest-ranking member of the Democratic Party. Congressman Clyburn talked about a number of important industry topics, including the importance that legal marijuana and decriminalization are playing in the larger discussion of and fight for police reform. In referring to the Congressional Black Caucus, of which he is chair, Representative Clyburn said, quote, "Most of this is generational like anything else, but it carries the day. Decriminalization carries the day in the caucus," unquote. Give this one a read and watch. Ben Adlin has his second headline on the day with news out of Arizona that Republican Governor Doug Ducey is claiming that legal marijuana would cause, quote, "more deaths on highways caused by high drivers, dramatic increases in teen drug use, and more newborns exposed to marijuana," unquote, in an official state voter guide to be widely printed and distributed once a legalization ballot measure is formally certified. None of the things cited by Governor Ducey are true, with a number of states now having legalized marijuana and not had the sky fall down upon them. Governor Ducey, who oversees a state with a raging coronavirus case and death count due to government inaction, was joined in railing against legal cannabis in the voter's guide by other Republican lawmakers who wondered, what about the kids? Thankfully, the guide is also including voices from those in favor of reform, so hopefully enough voters come down on the right side of things in the fall. Massachusetts state regulators just announced that marijuana dispensaries can resume selling cannabis oil vapes produced before December of last year, just as long as they have been properly tested. Massachusetts put a quarantine on selling older products last November in the midst of the vaporizer health crisis, only allowing newly produced products to be sold. Now that the quarantine is lifted, the stored older products can be sold again, but will need to pass testing before going out on shelves. It's estimated that around $45 million in product has been tied up. And finally for today, yesterday, lawmakers in Thailand approved a proposal that will allow for the production of medical marijuana as well as its use, import, and export. The plan still needs to make its way through a few governmental channels before it can be voted on by Parliament, but it's good to know that progress is in process in Thailand. Pop over to Marijuana Business Daily for more details here if you need them. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links for all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Greenworks Consults, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with Marijuana Today.
One take, Shay. One take.